Hi everyone, welcome back. What happens with index laws or exponents when we're doing a division? What happens to the whole question? How does it change? I like to think of the x, when you're doing the division, we write that as a line, like a fraction bar. So on the top, on the numerator, we'll have x times x times x. And on the bottom, we'll have x times x. Now, really that's what it means. Of course, we're going to use shortcuts. So I want you to use shortcuts. I want you to learn the rules so you can do this much quicker. But if you don't understand what's going on with it, you could go back to the number videos on the playlist with index laws with numbers, or you can watch just this. Any numerator will cross out with any denominator. When you've got multiplication, you're allowed to cancel. Really what we're doing is this. X into x goes once and x into x goes once. Just remember that x stands in place of a number. So if that was the number 5 by 5 by 5 and 5 by 5, the 5s are cancel and you'll be able to work out what those were. So another one, x into x goes once and x into x goes once. And if you look at what's left, we've got a 1 by x, which is just 1x. And we've got a 1 by 1. And of course, most people don't write all those 1s in. And you just can write the answer as 1 over 1 is 1, which is just x there. Let's have a look what happens to these little numbers up here, the exponents, the powers. 3 take 2 is 1. So when you're dividing with index laws, you can subtract the powers, and again, the bases stay the same. So the bases are going to stay the same, so the x's stay in x, and the 3 take 2 is 1. We don't have to write that one there. So here's an easy one, but a little bit different. So if I apply just the rule, it'd be okay, but let's just write it out for once. So that's an x times an x times an x, and we're going to divide that all by x. So little ways of thinking, that will cross off with that one. I could write the ones, but I don't need to, and I'm left with an x squared. That's what's a shortcut. It's not really a shortcut, it's a rule. 3 take 1 is 2. So when you're dividing, so division, what do we say? The bases stay the same, and then we subtract the powers. And I jump between the words powers and index. Normally I talk about powers and index. In Australia I don't normally talk about exponent, but in other countries they do. Let's have a quick look at this one. Why don't we just use the rule? The bases stay the same. By the way, this only works when you've got the same base. If they were different bases, if that was n to the 5 divided by n to the 3, you can't just use the rule to get rid of the powers. 5 take 3 is 2, so that's a 5 squared. Now some fairly quick ones, but people have trouble with the numbers. What happens when you've got a 10 and a 5? Well, the 10 and the 5 are normal numbers, so they work just normal. I could write this all out in full. I'll do it for once. 10 times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's a 10m to the power of 5. We're going to divide it by 5m squared. 5 with an m with an m. So we cross off the m's, cross off another m. You go on left with m, which is we refer to as m cubed. And then 10 over 5, how many times does 5 go into 10? You got twice. So what's the shortcut? Normal numbers work normally. They're not up here on the power, they're right out here at the front. So 10 divided by 5 is 2. And then you've got the division. The bases stay the same, so it's an m. 5 take 2 is 3. So if I tried to shortcut the process, trouble with this one is I've got 8 divided by 5. I'm just going to write that as 8 divided by 5. So there's 8 divided by 5, which basically just becomes a fraction. And you could look at that fraction and think about it as a decimal, and you could rearrange it in all sorts of ways. And then what do? The bases stay the same. And you subtract the powers when we're doing division. So division, the bases stay the same, 4 take 2 is 2. And there's the answer to the question. By the way, just in case you're interested, this is a numerator, that's a denominator, and this is actually a numerator. So if I wanted to, I can just write 8y squared on 5. So if you see some people write it that way, some people write it that way, it's the same thing. Some people even go a step further and they'll say how many times does 5 go into 8, and they'll write it as a decimal as 1.6y squared. So if you see people write it as a decimal, it's just the same as changing it from a fraction. Last one over here. The 2 divided by 3 is just 2/3. Normal everyday fraction, you got 2/3 off. The m stay the same, the bases stay the same. Subtract the powers, 6 take 2 is 4. and there's the answer to the question. Of course you could change that to 2m to the 4 on 3. Now there's a horrible one to change to a decimal. If you understand your decimals though, 2/3 is 0.6 repeater. Some people write repeater with a dot, some people write it with a little line on there or a dash on there. I'm used to writing it as a dot. If I'm writing it for more than one number, I put the line across. So that's 0.6 m to the 4. Most people, when it comes to this topic, will just leave the fractions and not go to the decimals. And the good thing about the fractions is it's a nice, clear, exact form. I could change that to 1 3/5, but most people in algebra just leave it as 8/5. There's no need to change it. Hope you enjoyed it. Number 2, number 3 is coming up. Thank you.